your civilizations the address of peace, brotherhood, and trust, Silivri. And its history defying centuries, its culture distilled from centuries and extending to the present day, while reaching into the future with its nature that encompasses all the beauties of life, it virtually shouts, with the unique human stories in every corner. There is life in Silivri. On our journey to document the riches of Silivri, our first stop was Gümüşyaka. How a village community, born out of solidarity, collectively defied all challenges, how the land, when watered with sweat, reciprocated, and the transformation of this charming place into a resort center, leaving its mark here. As we get to know the names more closely, we will all say together that there is life in Gümüşyaka.
Now Silivri Shaka, farmer, was given as a wedding gift to Shakir Pasha's daughter Belkus Hanım. 52,000 acres, 26,000 acres of land. And it was heard that this land would be sold from somewhere. And this news was spread by people who migrated from the Balkans to gather people around. The first of these, Mazlum Yavuz's side right now, Gani Yavuz's, the late Gani Abi's father, is taking the lead. To those coming from Menli Kırklareli, we referred to them as Bozkurt. The person residing in Değirmenköy, who came to Değirmenköy during the population exchange among our ancestors' fathers and grandfathers, was from Kırklareli's Geçitaze village, Ediye village, the center of Kırklareli, etc.
Mehmet Bozkurt says to Zuhrab, Allah. At that time, the merchants there, the big merchants, he says, Allah, says, give me 5 lira. Let me go to Kırklareli. He's also from the Menlik people, Mehmet Bozkurt. Burgacık village of Kırklareli, his homeland. He says, let me go and explain the situation there too. Let's come back and take this place again.
In the year 1938, under the leadership of individuals like Mehmet Bozkurt and Mazlum A, it is being purchased.
Then my grandmother gets in the car, rides. Uncle Ahmet measures. Also Şevket, Ebrus, come to Gümüşyaka, see the farm. In Gümüşyaka farm, there are 26,000 acres of land. A person named Shakir Bey manages it. After that, a pasha's daughter named Belkis Hanım. That's the farm, inherited from her father. They see the place. My grandmother buys 1/200 sections from there. If it's 4. She was going to buy more. But some of my uncles preferred to stay in Kırfal. We had approximately 1,000 sheep and goats. Some say there's the sea. The sea would take the sheep and goats. That's why they said we won't go there. They stayed there. We came to Shaka like us.
Yes, my father bought a district from here. The farm was sold here. He bought a district from there. My father came, worked here for a few years, and managed the fields. Then we came.
Here, in the summer, they would come and clean the barns where the animals stayed. And they would sleep and wake up there. In other words, they would divide the space with mats and rugs.
There used to be a yogurt shop here on the side opposite Mazlum. In the form of a yogurt shop in the warehouses, my late father's mother, my grandmother, used to say they settled there, meaning they took shelter.
There were people sitting in tents. In the place where those pigs lived, we even slept there. Then Gümüşyaka developed.
Who came, for example, people from the Kırklar area. They come, they look around here. Well, there's no firewood here. What are we going to do? We can't stay here without firewood. Many people fled back. All right, They fled back, and those who stayed, stayed.
Of course, back then, when we migrated from here, there were no rafts or anything, and there was no proper road either. Cars came to the masters from horse-drawn carriages. Even Mutal's grandfather's father came, I think his name was Ali Serdar. I remember him, of course. Well, we were able to get here from there in 4 days by having picnics or resting along the way.
I did not come with a horse cart, but the grandfathers came with a horse cart. They came from the village in 10 days. They would arrive here, next to the fountain in aşağılık, in Başpınar. There they hitched a donkey and a cow. The grandfathers used to tell they would arrive there. They endured a lot of hardship, mud. Oh, now it's very nice though. You know, sometimes you wish that time was now. You even long for that mud. Now there are lights everywhere, everything is there, but taste of the day is different.
Of course, let me start by talking about the elders of our village at that time. The headman was Yusuf Çavuş. His assistant was Abbas Algür, the council of elders of our village. Of course, they start with the village. The main population here comes from Kırklareli. Also the Bergachik region, which is also connected to Kırklareli. They came from Bulgaria, from Oklalı. People from Yugoslavia came later. There are those who came from Greece. That's how they established the village. In 937,
first, during the population exchange, they come to Satalka while the village is being established again. They sell their lands at that location. They come from here, buy shares, and establish the village.
And Gümüşyaka. It's connected to Çorlu. Its name at that time was Eli, meaning soldier Eli, or old Eli. Currently, on many people's, it is written as male on the identity card.
After 38, Cadastre also passed in 58. All the lands of our Gümüşyaka had large plots, like 5,000 meters, 5,000 acres, 10,000 acres, well, 26,000 acres of land here. From those plots, they apply to Cadastre. How many shares did everyone get? Dorna. So, at that time, 150 acres was one share. According to the power of their money, those who had money took a lot, those who didn't took as much. These shares, after a certain time from the Cadastre, were certified on everyone's names. And now people are working on those lands with everything, their places.
Then Silver Collar, the story of Silver Collar is also the first settlement was established on this collar. In the subsequent construction, the village that was established was also built on a collar. Silver, found in very few places in the Marmara, got its silver from the sparkling white sand, like silver from the sea sand. Silver and collar have merged. Its name became Silver Collar.
This charming settlement, synonymous with its silver-like beach, has successfully nurtured and hosted dozens of important names in its story, evolving from a single farm to a charming village, and then quickly to a town. These names, sometimes referred to as Lord, sometimes as headman, and sometimes as mayor, have spared no sacrifice to bring everything that makes one say there is life on the Silver Shore to the present day.
Mazlum Ağa is one of the wealthiest in this village and has helped a lot in the establishment of this village by assisting the poor and others. He has provided all kinds of support.
The person who founded this village is my grandfather, Mazlum Yavuz. Also from Ermenköy, together with Bozkurt, they established this village. At that time, there weren't any people anyway. They gathered people from here and there to unite them to establish the village. They brought them together here. Grandfather made everyone a property owner. All right, he was very helpful.
There was the late Mazlum Ağa. The oppressed lord was a person with integrity. The time came. The people were hungry. They opened their hamburgers and gave wheat to everyone. The time came when Mazlum Ağa's fields remained unplanted from the rain. Then the villagers gathered, everyone went to his farm, planted the fields, and got wheat. There was this unity and togetherness.
He was traveling back and forth from Greece. He said, I used to go to Greece. He suddenly went to Greece. He collected coins from there. Whenever everyone said, Grandpa, our coin, he was a man who could see the future. He collected coins. He brought coins here today.
They elect my father as the village headman, Hussein Agu. The first headman. Here is my father.
In summary, the first headman of our village, Hussein Agu. I can't tell you the order of the others, though. Adım Akun is noteworthy. I am listing the headman as headman. In order, the next one is Said Bilmez. After that, Hussein Gülg.
He served as the village headman here for 16 years. In the state of 60, let's say the military district governor of that day, most of us were connected to Tekirdağ. It was mostly our district. At that time, the majority had 44 villages. I don't know if it's the same now. They replaced all the headmen of the 44 villages. Only our Uncle Hussein and one other, I don't remember from which village. He leaves him, the district governor, as the former headman, meaning he is trustworthy. I am leaving him.
There is someone named Hüseyin Güçlü from Gümüşyaka. He served as a village headman for 20 years. Your father also served as a council member alongside him, together with him for about 20 years. After that, of course, they withdrew. Other young people took their place. For example, Ahmet Oruç also visited here. Made many contributions here. For instance, there is a pine grove. He created that. In the city, it is now known as Ahmet Oruç Pine Grove.
That is where the pine is. Oruç, Mehmet, Ahmet But, Oruç. Mehmet is his real name. It is his work. He had those pines planted at that time. We were there with Goymiyeyle, the late, yes, Mehmet Olcher, one of the founders of our village, also made a very significant contribution.
From the philanthropist of our village, Ahmet Ölçer and his wife Saliha Ölçer. They wanted to build a school. They had no children. Of course, by establishing good communication with them, a middle school was built in our village. Uncle Ahmet insisted that the school must be across from my house. I will see the children. I will love them, visit them. They will see me. At that time, in the area we called the cattle path extending towards the middle of the village, construction of the school began on a part of the square. The foundation ceremony was attended by the governor of Istanbul and various officials. The foundation dağıt was laid with the ceremony. When I finished middle school in 1988, from the old primary school, we moved to the new school, and our school was inaugurated with a ceremony. At that time, President Kenan Evren, they wanted him to come, Uncle Ahmet, and Kenan Evren by helicopter to the current location of the Agricultural Vocational High School, which was a field. He came there and all the force commanders together, the school was inaugurated.
Of course, I was a candidate for Mukhtar in the elections in 1989. I became a candidate for the local headman. At that time, the people chose us. I served as a headman for one term. I served as a headman. During that headmanship period, headmen did not know each other. I am the one who founded the Headmen's Association in Ilire. I struggled quite a bit. I established it. The headman is performing his duties, but they don't know each other.
Honestly, they all left a mark on them. They all served. Ahmet Oruç did it too. Ali Güçlü did it too. Hüseyin Güçlü did it too. I mean, The unity and togetherness of that time don't exist today. Because people have grown a lot now. It's become a bit modern too. We wouldn't do such cooperation. Well, someone couldn't plant their field. Despite the mud and rain, everyone would go and plant. I mean, they would help.
Honestly, here in 89, during the election, there was neither a building here, nor a municipality, nor anything. Ismet, from his own diving, Ismet was a 37-year-old mayor. He did something. From his diving, from his foresight.
In the election held in 1989, I was blessed to be the first mayor of Gümüşyaka. God granted me this opportunity, and under the conditions of that day, from the position I took over from the village headman, we endeavored to transform our town from a village to a town as a municipality.
Yes. After I left the job in 83 and returned to the village, a public vote was held here, in Bell, to change our status from a village to a town, as it was called at the time. It was, of course, accepted by a large majority. In the elections held in 89, we also ran as candidates and won together with Ismet President. Young Council, President Ismet must have mentioned it in detail about these topics, and I was the youngest member of that council.
Tertip heyeti adına Mesut Güçlü Bey'i ben davet ediyorum sahneye. Ve Sayın Başkanımızı da lütfen efendim.
Gümüşyaka Belediyesi birinci yaz şenliklerine büyük ilgisi ve katkılarından dolayı Sayın Belediye Başkanı İsmet Kiraz Pınar'ı kutlar ve bu şenliklerin devamını diliyorum. Teşekkür ederim.
There were certainly great difficulties. I mean, turning a dusty, earthy village into a town, establishing a new municipality was really difficult. We overcame those difficulties together. And we handed over a ready municipality to those who came after us. We endured the hardships, and they enjoyed the benefits.
As a result, the first mayor was Ismet Surat Pınar. We also took office here as founding council members from SHP, initially serving as SHP, and ANAP FE. We served as SHP council members, along with 4 ANAP council members as founding council members. Of course, the duties were carried out under difficult conditions. Despite that, we still brought it to a good point.
We need to do something. What do we need to do? Well, we are a village. The people were very tired of the dust and dirt. When there was even a tiny bit of dust, the shopkeepers found the inside of their shops in a bad state. I need to do something. I need to make asphalt. I also wrote a petition. I wrote 5,000 tons in the petition. Asphalt. We went, and while waiting at Nurettin Hoca's door, even the mayor of Fatih and the mayor of Zeytinburnu went in and out. So why shouldn't I go in? I said, I will meet alone. Then I took the petition in my hand and told the secretary, don't let anyone in. I went in, Chief Director. He said, go ahead. Son, what's up, Ismet? I said, Mr. President, I have such and such a request. He looked at the petition and said, 5,000 tons, what will happen? Son, it's not just one street for us. He signed it when I came out of that thing, there. Back then, things were typed like that on a typewriter. I changed that 5,000 tons to 50,000 tons. And for the 50,000 tons of asphalt, rest assured. I said, it's challenging the transportation. I mean, we struggled a lot. We postponed, no? But I even paved the farm roads. If it's still being printed today, on October 2030, at the meeting I held in 2019, I confessed this to Nurettin Hoca and made a silver joke to him. I also thanked him on behalf of the public.
This was a brief summary of the story of Gümüşyaka evolving from a farm to a town. Of course, while this story was being written, we cannot overlook the hundreds of people supporting each other through collective effort, rushing to help their neighbor at every opportunity, and sharing scarcity at times and abundance at others, In a human lifetime, the years that are etched into memories, the years when the foundations of a life that will span decades are laid, are undoubtedly the childhood years, and the people of Gümüşyaka who face the years like a big family always remember their childhood fondly.
What will we do in our childhood, my dear? Farming, taking care of animals, playing hopscotch. The child would lie down. Back then we would climb up the sunflowers like that. Its roots, there were such thick roots on it, it became nakkeli. We would make cars out of their heads, ride on the stem, and play like this. We couldn't play with electric things like now. They didn't exist. There was nothing.
No electricity, no power, just handheld lamps. Well, not everyone had a kerosene lamp anyway. They were using kerosene lamps. We finished elementary school with a hand lamp. Not a hand lamp, I mean. We finished school with a gas lamp. That's when our life started here. So what did we do? Back then, during our fathers' and grandfathers' time, it was the same. There were no factories or luxurious things like that here. What were we doing? We were engaged in animal husbandry. Every house had animals in front. We had goats. We would take them to graze, take them to pasture.
Can I tell you something? Something I could never forget in my life. The villages. Animals, we used to graze them. My father served as a ranger here for 27 years. He knows I cried for a week for a pair of shoes we knew as charak. And why was that? So I could run well after the animals, because they were light.
We definitely used to go to the field. I mean, it was also comfortable. We used to go to graze the animals. We also went to graze the animals. For example, we took the sheep and cows and grazed the horses. We plowed the field like this. We also did these tasks.
There were many difficulties, my son. We used to make bread. There was no bread. We bake bread in the oven in the morning. We go out for bread. We go to the field. We reap with a sickle. After that, we milk the cows. We have our own milk. We have no water. We carry water. We used to carry water on our backs. We would come back and do the laundry.
We used to plant and sow things in the field. We were engaged in animal husbandry. We would help friends and family. They would come to us and we would go to them. At that time, it was done as a collective effort. It's not possible with just 1 or 3 people. In those years during our childhood,
I also herded sheep. I was also a majority. I was among the first to ride a tractor. We bought a tractor in the 1950s.
I was 9 years old. I remember stuttering during the day. I remember planting during the day, meaning there were no day machines back then. I remember we used to reap with a sickle when we were at the age to attend high school in 73-74. There were no combine harvesters. There were only binders. In places where the binders couldn't reach, in weak areas, it was harvested by hand. I remember we used to harvest by hand. We used to make bundles. Making a stack was one thing. Making a pile was a completely different thing. Knowing these from the thresher, putting the sacks under the thresher was a very different thing. Bringing the harvest home, pouring it into the granary was a very different pleasure. I remember my late mother saying that even cotton was planted back then, extracting potatoes from the threshing floor, onions. Everything that comes to mind today, like beans, onions, potatoes, all were planted in our own gardens. Not in our gardens, but in our threshing floors.
back then, when I was a child, there was a machine we used to tie hay. We would turn together with the horses. We used to cut by hand and so on.
I used to go to lay out the bundles at Almond when I was 10, 15 years old. We would lay out the bundles. They would carry the bundles and make piles. Our mothers, our fathers. That's how it was. We grew up alongside them. I got married. I had children in the fields. We just roll along.
We're children of farmers. My late father was involved in animal husbandry for many years. Animal husbandry is a grandfather's profession. Most of our village is already engaged in animal husbandry and farming. So we have herded a lot of cows. For example, the place where Turim High School is now, where the old municipality was, used to be a silver joke football field, let's say. There was no stadium. It was already a football field. We have herded cows there.
We used to go to the field. We used to go to dig the vineyard. At the age of 10, I used to dig the vineyard by myself. We had animals. We used to go to graze the animals. Where Turam is now, it was Meraluk Torası. We had an animal from here. We used to go to graze it there. Why did we go? At that time, the sea, so that we wouldn't run away to the sea. Our late father sent us there with an animal. So the address would be known.
I was born in 53. The road was opened here in 60. We were 7, 8 years old at that time. The road was opened and we went to school in the mud. I mean, to be more precise, we went to school in boots. Of course, we are grateful for our current state. It turned out very well for our time.
I told you I was born in 53. Back then there was no asphalt. I remember when the asphalt was laid. There was no asphalt, there was no road here. After that, under the London asphalt. For certain years, of course, they were blasting dynamite up there. We were collecting the wires and making beads.
Of course, I mean, Gümüşyaka was very dusty and dirty because it was open to the north. The winds dominated, and throughout the summer, the north winds were always strong, just like today. And it was full of dust and dirt. But we were happy in those years. I mean, we would sneak into the neighbor's garden and cause mischief there. Plums, apricots. Not many people know apricots. They call it apricot. The small ones are apricots. They are very sweet, in fact. We still have an apricot tree in our garden. We used to eat them.
I was first in mathematics. 4th and 5th grade studied at the same school. Our teacher would come from Istanbul, even while speaking. Even as he turned his back, I would bring it to him. I bought a lot of chocolate and distributed it to my friends. I graduated from my school with first place.
We don't have money to buy things from the grocery store. He steals eggs from the coop and leaves. We were buying things from the grocery store. We also got hit with a stick once or twice. In that regard,
We took the buffaloes towards the sea. We went up the sand dune. Did the buffaloes enter the sea? They didn't open up towards the dip. How we cried, how the buffalo swims. We cried there for hours. The buffaloes aren't coming out outside.
The Gümüşyaka Sea has an atmosphere like this. Especially after the 1980s, Gümüşyaka, which almost turned into Istanbul's #1 resort center, hosts its visitors not only with its sea, but also with its land, neighborhood, and hospitality.
we were around here at that time, and it was very lively, I hear. And Gümüşyaka is top-notch. I mean, in this area, everyone flocked here.
It was just starting to develop. We only had one market here. Back then, Vakal was a small place. And people would line up, they would queue like that. Of course, back then, there were no things like scales, Ceylan automatics. There were grams and other things. But at that time, I had memorized everything. Like this, I would calculate down to the last penny. And those who came from outside would say to me, "Victorious, praise victorious." They would console me. The more they did that, the more determined I became. I was working like that, you know. My calculations were very strong like that. When I added things up, I would do it click, click, click, like a machine.
Especially between 1985 to 2000, when you said you lived in Gümüşyaka, it was like saying you lived in Istanbul or Bodrum. In other words, practically, all of Istanbul's upper class, like industrialists and such, were here. When the earthquake happened in 1999, people were a bit apprehensive about it. We suppose that's what we think. Later, after 2000, there was a decline in the summer house trend. But between 1985-2000, during the most popular times of our Gümüşyaka neighborhood, we were a municipality back then too.
From 85 to 2000, having a summer house here was fantastic. There would be 30,000 to 40,000 people here in the summer. I know, because I was working as a shopkeeper then. We have a market. People would come and we would close the door to not take in customers. We would let people in 10 by 10. It used to be that crowded back then. This continued until the year 2000. Like that, after 2000, a decline started. Big supermarkets came in and so on. But from 85 to 2000, there was an amazing summer here. That crowd is no longer here. That crowd doesn't come here anymore. People have somewhat fled from here. Back then, between 85 and 95, the entertainment sector here was very good. Discos, bars and so on, concerts. For example, İsmet Kiraz concerts during those times.
Gümüşyaka'da bayram, köy böyle başkanımız olursa her gün bayram olasın. Gümüşyaka'da bayramlar, Allah'a ısmarladık. Dostlar, tüm sevgiler, tüm saygılar size.
We used to have concerts. I don't know what, what we did back then was go to the disco. Come, you'll get it yourself otherwise.
Then there would be concerts. I don't know what, it united us. Going to the disco was the thing back then. What will you do for yourself? What else? And honestly, those times, especially the earlier 90s, between the 80s and 95s, were very beautiful. How was it beautiful? Its proximity to Istanbul, day trip picnics, beautiful places where people could swim. Well, I don't know, back in those days, maybe 150, 200 buses. These are the places they came to. Camping sites. We have a large garden. The place where Gece Pazarı is now, Çamlık, packed densely. Tradesmen couldn't make a living with bread. Those years were very beautiful.
We used to constantly meet with the summer residents. They would come, they would shop. Those years were very beautiful. They would come to the sea, to the beach. We also produced some things because we had animals. We would produce milk and such. Everything could be found in our home.
Until that day, many summer residents would come here. They would buy 5 kilos, 3 kilos, 10 kilos of meat. We couldn't keep up back then. Slaughter animals. Then BIM stores, roadside markets, and supermarkets opened. I said the business would shrink. Son, let's do it on the farm. We dealt with animals, sheep, goats. We did those jobs. That's how we made a living.
In the 70s, when we were stepping into our youth, the summer house phenomenon exploded in our Gümüşyaka. Suddenly, our fields turned into very valuable plots of land. Of course, with this, constructions began. People built their summer houses. Naturally, there was a cultural clash between the people coming from the city and those in the village. At that time, I even remember it very well. Signs were put up by the village headman at the exit from the sea to the village. It was forbidden to walk around the village in a swimsuit. An interesting memory of ours. Since there was no water in those years, people would always get water from fountains built on nearby roads in the village. Women generally carried the water to the houses. Of course, when the summer visitors came in swimsuits and took water from the fountain, there were unpleasant sights and minor disagreements. Of course, such conflicts.
That period was very important because at that time everything was cheaper here for the buyer because it was still new. Of course, for the people of Gümüşyaka, those prices were expensive. The asphalt was also newly laid, of course. This was a poor place. Since there was no asphalt, no road, nobody was coming anyway. After the road was opened and the place gained value, people came, they bought 10 acres of land here for 10,000 lira. Right by the sea. It seemed like a lot of money. Of course, after that, the value increased and kept increasing. But by the time people realized its value, the land was already gone, just like everywhere else. But back then, Gümüşyaka wasn't as crowded. For example, the population wasn't as large. There were about 1,000, 2,000 people, and no one was on the beach. Now our population has reached $10,000, and it becomes 25,000 in the summer. At that time, we didn't have a sewage system. Back then, the septic tanks in the sea were very clean. You could drink water from the sea, and you could see the fish. We lived through those days. Then, of course, when the septic tanks came in, no matter how much treatment there was, it wasn't enough.
That time, we were a bit sandy along the coast. They used to give them to the grooms. All right. Recently, the grooms hit the jackpot.
No, for the summer house, here's the thing. This place first, there's a place we call the Pine Grove here. Well, it used to be famous here, famous. You know, first they came to this Pine Grove, they saw it, they did things. Then they started here, building summer houses. And the first ones to build summer houses here, for example, we called it the doctor's site. There are the 28s. And maybe it was introduced from there. If it weren't for the sea, Gümüşyaka wouldn't be like this. It wouldn't be Gümüşyaka. You know, people come here for the sake of the sea. After that, of course. Some sold their place, had a wedding, built a house. And from that day to this, we've been getting by. You know,
Gümüşyaka, from around the 80s to the year 2000. Was there a statistic in Istanbul at some point? That is, 3 or 4 out of every 10 people in Istanbul knew Gümüşyaka. Back then, of course, people were having more fun, I suppose. Not just suppose, it was like that. That's what I saw too. On the 4th day of the week, competitions were organized, like Oriental, Disco, Rike, whatever. It was comfortable then. I mean, every night and back then, families would leave their small children to reserve a table during the day. You know what I mean? In the evening, the table would become mysterious. The child would come there during the day, open a soda, and occupy the table, you know. My parents would say they were coming tonight. I mean, we had a lot of memories there, a lot of memories. Especially one of them, very much so. A scene that remains in my mind. Little children would come, about 7, 8 of them. They danced beautifully. Come on, brother, play some music so we can dance and all. Over time, these children grew up. One day I am going to Istanbul, in Bakırköy, in the huge city of Istanbul. I mean, I'm having a meal with my friend when I asked for the bill and I'm told the bill has been paid. I was told, so I looked to see who paid the bill. I said, my dear, who paid the bill? I said, I paid it, brother. Who are you? I said. But I said, I'm one of those little kids, you know, that remained in my memory as a very beautiful moment. I mean...
Of course. Back then it was a recreational area of Istanbul. Silver Collar. A place where all the summer houses were located, from Ankara, from Istanbul, where distinguished people came and built homes. The biggest problem of Gümüşyaka was the lack of water. There was no water. Let me start from here. We used to carry water from the village fountains. There were 2 or 3 fountains between the neighborhoods. Water would come after midnight, around 12 or 1. It was a water supply built by the late Ahmet Ölçer, a reservoir. Veli Çavuş's fountain. I used to obtain water from these.
There was nothing with a silver collar. We had an Uncle Osman who ran the garden, ours. Their wife, I think her name was Sister Ulfet. I asked the lady, they were the ones running the garden, the place where the night market was. Back then, people from Istanbul would come. How should I tell you? At most, 10 taxis. As young people with silver collars, we would run there. That poor woman would prepare food for them. And since she also did gardening, she would give them something. What do I know about those people? I mean, when they came to us, they saw us as siblings, and we saw them as something. Then later on, buses started to come. Later on, it got crowded, very much.
It was a good move at that time. A change. The beaches started to fill up, the sea. Previously, no one used to swim here. When the village was alone, that's when it started to get lively. So the essential, after 75.
In Gümüşyaka, what is fondly remembered, it was not just the years it was a summer resort, of course. Whether from the Balkans or from various parts of Thrace, the people who came here brought with them the traditions and customs, the entertaining practices that form the foundation of the community, These delightful customs are slowly disappearing from daily life today. Even so, let's hear from those who keep the traditions alive that they will never be erased from memory.
Honestly, those old customs are not practiced anymore. In the past, for example, it used to start here. On Friday, weddings, it ended on Sunday evening, continuously for 3 days. Drums were played. At weddings, jewelry would be given. For example, one would bring a pot, another would bring a lamp, someone else would give money with something else, and so on. Those old traditions were followed, and on the last evening, Saturday evening, tables were set up like this. Young people would sit there, whether young or old. Tables were set up and they would drink, continuing until morning like this.
Of course, for example, with us now, in our father's time, when they went to ask for a girl's hand in marriage, let's say, they would say, bring this many sacks of sheep. They would bring sheep, they would bring quilts. Well, at the bride's reception, our young men who are going to the military would go out on the land. If the girl is going away, for example, if we are giving the girl in a suitcase, on the henna night, the groom is withdrawn, and there is a talk with the groom. So, what will you give? To the groom, you are taking a girl. It is agreed upon later. The next morning, when the groom comes to take the girl, the soldiers see the bride off. That is, they play and play with drums until the exit of the village. They see them off. We have such customs.
Well, until we finished high school, we received the land compensation money. For example, what is the date today? Isn't it July 22nd? We know that on this 22nd of July, we sat down and drank raku while making fun with pickles. We know that we took the land compensation money and spent it with our friends in the evening.
It started on Friday evening. Drummers. Back then there were those who played the tambourine. We used to dance to this tambourine. We wouldn't stop dancing until 8 p.m. For example, from the groom's shave, 10 tables would be set up on this side, 10 tables on that side. There, cheese melon, watermelon, grapes, pickles, fried chickens, raggis. There would be drinks placed, for example. We would get up to dance. When you got up to dance, everyone would pin money on the groom.
Once upon a time, the circle played. There were drummers and dancers. They hired dancers. On the children's side, we hired dancers. They took me with the dancers. They took me as a bride from the century-old carriage. They took me with the century-old carriage with horses. That's how it was.
My brother was there. They had come. The whole regiment is coming. From the fountain, where the Bible is, I said. I will take it from 100 meters away, I said. No, people will talk, then I won't take it, I said. It will be 100 meters, I said. Then I went outside. I took it from about 50 meters away, not 100 meters. The old woman, she used to give a rug. Then they said, this is infidelity. Infidelity. But we opened a path. After that, everyone was left exposed. That's why we led the way. There.
Mine is mine. There was a girl thing. There was a motor, a tractor at Nazmi uncle's place. No, it was at the place, one of the kids' place. They took it with that. Me? I have my sheets, said a rug came into the open. We used to hide a lot so they wouldn't see us. That's how it was. At that time, Nelly says there is nothing. One person has a tractor, no truck, no taxi. Now each person has their own taxi. Back then there weren't any. That's it.
At night, people would gather in large areas. If it was winter, they would gather in large indoor areas. And those were the years when there was no electricity. At that time, there would be gas lamps and gas flashlights in homes. But at these weddings, the luxury you see here was truly a luxury back then. And it would only be lit at weddings and would give off a strong light.
There was a horse race thing here in our place. There were 5 or 10 horses. Whoever had a horse, whoever came first would get a pillow. The one who came second would get a lamp. And the one who came third would get something. They say the last one would collect the horseshoes. They would take it and give it to the groom, and he would give them a tip.
I ran races. There were horses from my experience here. During weddings, from here, this place wasn't asphalt, but here, it was bumpy like this. There's a fountain further ahead from here, up to that fountain. We would go and return for horse races. At that time, we would take the pillow from the weddings, you know. We would take the pillow and bring it to the groom. We would give money, you know. But now that pillow tradition is gone, something like that, you know.
Of course, Şerafettin Yavuz. He had an allegiance. He always comes first. Initially, our Alpter son-in-law's grandfather had an allegiance. Back then, of course, they were from an older time. Resilient. He came later. Mazlum Aga. The lord of this village, Mazlum Ağa's grandson, Şerafettin Yavuz, he is alive, as you know. He had an allegiance. No one can surpass him. Wherever he goes, he's always first. I mean, he takes the pillow and comes to the son-in-law's house. From the son-in-law, money, and to the second, a lamp. They give the second one a lamp. A horse pillow to the first, a lamp to the second.
Horse racing. Back then we had beautiful horses. I was a bit sick. We were taking care of horses here. We would leave from here, drum. We're being prepared. We would head out to the priest's place. One person would come to the priest's place, line up the horses. He would give the command, let's go. I got a pillow from here several times. With Ahmed, you know, of course it was something, there was joy among people back then. Now, I don't know, people are a bit troubled.
Horse races, but it would be like this. The farmer's animal, the racing animal. But it was very exciting for us from what we called New Fountain, or of course from the stream, at most 1 kilometer or 2 kilometers. The race of the racing animal was just that long. There were no special racing animals.
There's a place called Başpınar from here. It's a place roughly close to Dermanköy. We used to go there from here with horses. We would race from there to this side. I mean, I also did it myself. I mean, that I caught up with them. I mean,
I also did one. Now, there was this path of Demirkaya. From there, the place we call the pear tree, they would come out with horses. One would take a pillow, another a lamp, and whoever raced and came first would take it. They were things, I mean, pillows. Horse races were also held there. In our old weddings, I mean.
I also rode a horse. I also raced. In fact, I had a horse. You reminded me now. We will take the bride from Çol. Şemsettin Gün's wife we will take. I was 13 or 14 years old at that time. We went to Santa, then we scored a goal from the back to the horses. From the back to Gümüşyaka. You know those lights. There, as Balabanya was coming, my horse did something like this. I fell, the horse went to the wedding, we took the pillow. Again, these horses are also smart. We left from that house. When the drum played, we had some horses. He would not eat for 24 hours, he would be like this. We would prepare the horse for the race. They would, there I fell, the horse went to the wedding house, then I ran there. Right, you're scattered, Şemsettin.
In military celebrations, there are also his photos. Two men, one becomes the groom, the other dresses as a woman to become the bride. They pretend to elope with each other. In such a form of entertainment, they would go off to the military. Later on, of course, military weddings began. The military wedding, as they call it, is a musical celebration held in the schoolyard. Everyone sends off their child to the military. They put a scarf around his neck, bid farewell, and dance with him. In the end, in the morning, the young men who are going to the military gather next to the mosque, and the village imam offers a prayer. Everyone was sent off to the military in this way.
my weddings were beautiful. 73. At a military wedding, I was the groom. We had a friend, Ismet, she was the bride too. We had such a wedding. After that, it continued. Always weddings.
I arranged it at the village weddings. He loved me and I loved him. Someone made an offer, they accepted, they gave, we are immigrants poor, but they gave, may God bless them.
But he was very beautiful, he was handsome. He was very handsome.
No, over the years they did things, fives, bracelets, because my husband couldn't resist when he saw me. He said, "You take whatever you want," and took me to the side. Don't even ask about my wedding. My wedding is a very big story. I was kidnapped. When I was 15, I escaped. After that, my wedding took place. 2 months later, Grandpa left for military service. He served in the military for 2.5 years.
Our wedding was also very beautiful. These people came from Macedonia. Oh, the games you should have seen?
There was a grandmother.
There was a grandmother. She was very short. How she would jump and dance, what things she would do. They were very playful. They would play a lot.
I pass by here every day. Our house is nearby. Of course, we loved each other. My father-in-law, may he rest in peace, loved me very much. Of course, we talk when coming, brother. We go to the coffee house. My father-in-law orders tea. We are always together. I mean, my uncle, Zeki, my real uncle, he is very good with him. My father-in-law is very gentle, a gentlemanly man. I actually heard those first things mostly from him, and also from Uncle Hussein Güçlü. Now, of course, the time came we asked. My father-in-law sees us talking, but he doesn't say anything. Of course we ask. He said, "Work's done." I have been nurturing a snake in my bosom.
Evet, o da bir baba. Ama onun yavrusu evde. Annesiyle beraber ve henüz daha 1 yaşında bile değil. O bütün çocukları sever. Kendi yavrusu gibi. Bütün insanları sever. Yaşamı sever. İster ki insanlar mutlu yaşasınlar. O, Gümüşyaka'nın belediye başkanı olmayı da bunun için istedi. Gümüşyakalılara iyi bir yaşam sağlamak için. Onları mutlu etmek.